The following talk was given at Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. Please visit our website at milehighchurch.org.
There are some significant things happening this week that caused me to want to dedicate this talk today to love and the possibility of unconditional love. My topic is unconditional love really unconditional? And it's Valentine's week. This Friday is Valentine's Day, and so what I know is that for some of us, that's a very activating day, whether it's that you do have a lot of loves in your life and people that you're going to celebrate the love that you experience, or you're feeling a loss of love this year, or loss of loved ones who've moved on to the next plane, or maybe a little bit of angst that you don't have a romantic love for Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day can be a very charged time for us. And so I'm inviting us into a deepened conversation about love, a kind of love that can sustain us and support us and be activated in our life regardless of any of those conditions around our relationship status. But I do have a couple little cartoons to start us off. The first one, Valentine's Day, because love isn't quite complicated enough as it is. Right? And so that's kind of what I was talking about there. I like this next one. It's two gentlemen getting cards. I need a card that says I'm hers Monday through Friday, but weekends are for football. Right? And with regards to unconditional love, the last one, I love you unconditionally, asterisk. Asterisk, terms and conditions do apply. And that's it, isn't it? Do terms and conditions really apply when it comes to unconditional love? I can say that though I've had experiences in my life, and I've talked about them here on this stage before, that allowed me to access and feel divine unconditional love at times in my life, it has been a dance that has caused me great question. And there was a time during my evolutionary journey, even in this teaching, where I knew that love could be big and broad and expansive, but I wondered if unconditional love really was possible, especially between us humans. Because I could feel the parts of me that were disapproving of myself, and I was pretty sure that if I couldn't approve of some of my own choices or who I was or how I was being, that it was very likely that whatever it was that created this universe, God, probably couldn't approve of me either. I was doing or falling prey to what our founder, Ernest Holmes, would talk about, superstitious thinking when it comes to God, or anthropomorphizing God. That is the propensity to project onto whatever created this our human tendencies. Gosh, it's hard for me to forgive, therefore it must be hard for God to forgive. And so then starting to develop stories that I couldn't possibly be lovable enough for God. And especially if I'd experienced rejection in relationships or any kind of betrayal or disconnect or inability to feel functional in my loving relationships, therefore I must not be loving by the God that created everyone. And so challenging myself there, challenging unconditional love as I watch humans lash out at other humans verbally and with actions that seemed rather unloving, and wondering, is it possible for us to love each other unconditionally? And I lived in that question, again, especially in terms of human relationships, for quite a while. And then I had an experience that changed me forever. I found myself pregnant. My wonderful former husband, Brad, and I found out we were going to have a baby. And I was pretty excited about it when it first happened and pretty energized by it. But then when we went for the ultrasound, I had a mystical experience, because in the ultrasound, I suddenly saw this little being on a screen who was living inside of me. And I learned and saw the heartbeat. And I learned and saw that he was a he. And he had a name, because we'd chosen names at that point already. And I fell into this mystical place. It was a place where I realized I will love this being forever, no matter what. I didn't even know him. I didn't know what his personality was like. I didn't know what he was going to be for a living, or I didn't know anything about him. But my unconditioned love of him was so big and broad that it literally brought me to my knees. And I realized, oh my gosh, it is possible to experience unconditional love as a human being. And if it's possible for little old me to unconditionally love this being I have never even met, might it be possible that that which created me could love me the same way? And it transformed me forever. Today, on my beautiful son's 21st birthday, happy birthday, Jesse, wherever you are this morning. Yes, there's a picture of my son and me. He's like a foot taller than me and is an amazing young man. I stand before you humbled by unconditional love and say to you that, yes, my beloveds, it is possible. And some of us have had that experience with our children and our grandchildren. I had a lot of people after the first service telling me, oh, wait till you have grandchildren. It's even better. And I know now that that experience has caused me to realize that when I am challenged to love anyone, a person I know or a stranger, I can call on that moment with Jesse and ask myself, how could I love this person the way I love Jesse? How could I send that same kind of love? Yeah, that person I'm challenged with or having a conflict with or don't appreciate that I'm hearing what they're doing or how they're doing it. I may not be able to love them as well as I would like or see the truth of them or even know them personally, but I can go into that deep place where we're all connected and experience that love. And I want to call us to that this week. I want to invite us in this week of Valentine's Day to ask ourselves, how could I be a greater loving presence and give up conditions and love unconditionally more often than not? But I do think there are challenges to this, and there are truths about this. So today I'm bringing us love myths and love truths. And we're going to start with the myths of unconditional love, because it's important for us to look at those. I brainstormed a whole bunch of them and finally came up with the two that I think are the most important myths about unconditional love. The first one, as spiritual beings, those of us who would call ourselves spiritual from any faith tradition whatsoever, those of us who've had that mystical experience of knowing that God is love and have contemplated and even maybe been brought to tears with this sense of unconditional love, the first myth we have to face is that unconditional love can also have its boundaries. I see us struggling with this as spiritual beings. We think that if I unconditionally love someone, that means that I just have to let them walk all over me, that I can't assert my boundaries, my preferences. I can't process the frustrations that come in a relationship, because then that's me not being unconditionally loving. That if I unconditionally love you, I should let you say or do anything you feel you need to say or do, and I'll just stand back and love you and send you love and have no boundaries. And I'm here to say that's a myth. That unconditional love absolutely can have boundaries. And that I really experienced this very clearly as a parent, right? I love you, and no, you cannot run into the middle of the street. I love you, and no, you cannot hit mommy. I love you, and no, that's not happening today. We're not doing that. I love you, and here's my boundary. I love you, and I'm also here to help you and to teach you and to help you become the person you want to be in life. And that comes with its boundaries. And in fact, sometimes in the relationships that we are the most connected to, Our ability to lovingly negotiate and be clear in our boundaries is part of what deepens our relationships. And sometimes it's just the how of boundaries. We humans in our relationships have not always had modeled to us people who could assert their boundaries with love. And sometimes we fall prey to that too. We have a boundary, but it's a boundary filled with anger and resentment and big pissosity. And we think that that's how we have to assert the boundary, right? That if I'm going to tell you that's not okay, the only way I know to do it is to be really mean and rude and loud about it, rather than be very calm and look someone in the eye. I can look someone in the eye now because of my relationship with my son. And I can communicate, oh, I love you. And no, that's not happening. Right? And we can do this very powerfully and profoundly. In her book, Dare to Lead, Brené Brown talks in terms of the workplace and relationships, that what happens that breaks down our relationships often is that we don't assert our boundaries lovingly. And when we don't do that, what grows in any relationship is resentment. And when we have resentment and it colors our relationship and it colors our world, it's very hard to find ourselves back in the center of our unconditional love. But when we begin to understand that we are worthy of being treated well and being respected and being loved, we can, without resentment and anger, express our boundaries. And sometimes a boundary is, I love you, you're an amazing person, and we can no longer be in a relationship together. It doesn't support you, it doesn't support me, I bless you on your path. But what we tend to do as human beings is we tend to, in order to sort of justify having boundaries, we use our anger and we use our frustration. And so we can learn that we can be absolutely loving and have boundaries. The second thing that I see happen a lot in terms of unconditional love and the myth of love is that I'm in my 29th year of ministry and have been a practitioner before that and have watched people in this faith tradition and other faith traditions believe for some reason that if unconditional love is present in my relationship with other people or in my relationship with the universe or God, my God, that means nothing bad ever happens. We never have conflict. There's never pain or suffering. There's never a challenge. That we fall into a myth that says that unconditional love comes in some perfect little bubble. That it means that if you unconditionally love me, we never have a problem. But that's just not true. That is also a myth. I've watched people, very faith-filled people, who struggle because they believe if God loves us unconditionally, then God would never allow bad things to happen to us. And if something bad is happening, that might mean that God doesn't love us. And if God doesn't love us, I'm going to leave God before it leaves me, and I'm out. And they'll step out of a faith tradition or a life of faithfulness that they've lived for years out of the inability to understand or process or be with the pain. What I've experienced in my life is that my most deeply important relationships come with the blessing of calling me into deep, deep unconditional love, and that every time there's a kerfuffle or a conflict or a misunderstanding, every time there's an experience of pain or suffering or conflict of any type, it's a doorway that if I choose to walk through it, takes me down deeper into the depths of unconditional love. Whereas if I avoid the door or I slam the door shut and refuse to be with it, I miss the opportunity. In other words, everything that's happening to you, to me, to us, is a doorway that says, come find God. Come on. Step through the door. Find God in this. Find God in that. And if I have the courage to walk through the door of the conflict, of the challenge, to discover the meaning of it for myself, to have my boundaries, to deal with the conversation, to be fully present, I find a deepened sense of unconditional love begins to have its way with me. Because I say that I'm worthy and the people I'm sharing this life with are worthy enough for us to stand in the fire of even disagreement, to stand in the fire of even seeing things very differently, to stand in the fire of loss and pain and suffering and conditions that we wish would just go away. And we stand in them together and we walk through them together, and unconditional love begins to have its way with us even more profoundly. Thomas Merton says, the beginning of love is to let those we love be perfectly themselves and not to twist them to fit our own image. Otherwise, we love only the reflection of ourselves we find in them. I truly found that as a parent, that if I'm unconditionally loving my son, it's more important for me that he become who he wants to be and not who I need him to be. And I find that is true in other relationships. It's more important to me that you be who you want to be than who I need you to be. That's unconditional love. Letting go of all the myths of pain and suffering. Those two myths are profound. But if we step now into love truths, what are some of the truths, the most important truths about love? Again, I brainstormed and found a whole bunch of them, but it came down to two really important ones to me. The first one is that I believe that unconditional love, in its most profound expression, is both active and passive. In other words, right now we hear a lot in our culture about people saying things like, it's not enough just to send thoughts and prayers, right? You see that in social media, like, oh, something bad happens and people send thoughts and prayers, and it's being trivialized as that's not enough. And on one hand, I totally understand this, because love, in its most profound form, is the passive sending of energy and the willingness to tend to the energy that exists between me and every other being that I see, that I perceive, that I encounter, as well at the invisible level, as well as what is it that I am doing and how am I being, how am I speaking in my relationships that show people and show myself that the love of God is active in me and is expressing itself through me. It's both and. I absolutely believe that when I see something going on in the world, or I see someone struggling, or I see someone I don't like, or I see decisions I don't like, it makes a difference. It's like a pebble in a pond that sends a ripple out when I'm willing to process that and get into a place of peace and send love and light. Because in that space of having boundaries, in that space of being loving, I can learn to separate the truth of a being from their behavior. The truth of a being from their behavior. And I can send my love to them. And I can send blessings to them. And I can send a desire of prayerfulness to them. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, though, says, and this is probably why people are frustrated with it, do not do this casually. Holmes would say to us, look, if you say to someone, I'm keeping you in my prayers, you better seriously pray for them. It becomes trivialized when we just start to say, oh, I'm sending you lots of love. I'm sending you lots of prayers right now. He says, take it seriously. Put your money where your mouth is. And if you're going to say that you're going to pray for someone or you're going to send love for someone, take the time and do it. That's the action part, is actually doing it. And so unconditional love requires of us this passive attention to our energy field and our perceptions about other people, our assumptions about other people, our stories about other people. And it requires a willingness to be active in that if I have something that's uncomfortable between me and another person, to challenge myself and to ask myself, how could I get back to love with this person? What will it take? To that divine agape love that is the God source between us, the namaste, the God in me witnesses the God in you. Because that love is healing love. That love can heal our planet. That love can heal any relationship that you or I have ever had. That love is transformative. So it's about the active and passive experience of unconditional love. And the second truth about love is that at the core of every life, the willingness to dance with this love is paramount. If we want to see our planet thrive and we want to see our life thrive, each one of us is challenged to do this holy, sacred work with every relationship we have. And we have a relationship with anyone who enters into our mind or our heart. That's a relationship. You perceive someone you don't know on television. You read about someone on Facebook or some social media. You see somebody here in this environment and you think something about them. You have an interaction with someone somewhere. And the minute that we have a relationship with anyone in any realm, the work of finding unconditional love begins. And it is holy, sacred, important work. But it does require us to step out of our boxes. Our boxes of labeling each other and thinking we know what the labels that people have mean. Everything from what we see on the surface about gender expression or about how they're behaving or what they're saying or what they're doing. It takes a willingness to go below the surface into the place where we're all connected and find that common energy. I saw this beautiful commercial, speaking of social media, this last week. It was going viral, I think, on some of the platforms, and it was on YouTube. It was a Danish commercial, and it was very moving. It was about a group of people coming together, and it was a big sound stage, and they literally had boxes on the stage. Imagine they were taped off with white tape. And even imagine right now if I invited everybody to come up here and step into some box, whether it was those of us who are natives of Colorado and those of us who are new to Colorado. They did the same thing with their country, and they had, different political parties or different socioeconomic status and different things, and everybody was in their boxes kind of staring each other down, probably clinging to their boxes, right? I'm this and I'm proud. I'm a proud that. And so then they did this process where they said, okay, now, anyone in the boxes who's a step parent, step out of the box. And so from all the boxes, a number of people stepped and formed a new group over in another area, and they took a picture of them. And the commercial goes on to call out different things. Any of you who feel lonely? Any of you who are... they had some trivial ones like to dance, and all the dancers dance. And from every box came people standing together, looking at one another, going beyond their boxes and forming a new group. And the gist of it really was at the end, they were all in a big group together, hugging each other, and all kinds of people of all ages, all kinds of people standing together as one group, stepping outside their boxes. What was touching, of course, is that to me that was unconditional love. And what it helped me to realize and helped me to remember is that no matter who's in my mind, who I'm perceiving, you and I have more in common with the people that we push against, probably, than the issues that we think separate us. As we look at someone and we think, well, they're this and I'm that, so we're separate. The truth is, from the human heart standpoint, it's possible that some of us who cried ourselves to sleep last night, that the person who's in a box that you abhor cried themselves to sleep. It's possible that as you struggle with the loss of a loved one, or you're making a dream come true, working hard to build a new life or build a new business, or have just fallen in love, or have gotten some new health status that you're excited about, or experiencing a health challenge, that the people that you and I push against may also be going through some of those very real human experiences. And if we're willing to allow ourselves to remember this possibility, it can open a door of compassion and love. It can allow us to realize we're more connected than disconnected. That's what will save us. That's what will transform us. That's what will allow our planet to continue to thrive, every human being on the planet to thrive, and each one of us to thrive, is to remember and recall in an active way how we're more connected than disconnected. Think about it. In human history, when has the story of how separated we are, how different we are, how right we are and wrong they are, ever forwarded the evolutionary journey of humans? It hasn't. It can't. And to the degree that we continue to feed that story in our own personal relationships, in the relationships we have with people out there, in the relationships we have with other faiths or other groups, we continue to keep that separation, and those boxes, they stay in place, but it won't ever serve us. Each one of us can step into unconditional love profoundly. There are some things that I'd like to suggest that we could do this week to live it out, if you will. To the people that we share our lives with on a daily basis, to be willing to ask a very courageous question. How could I love you better? How could I show you more clearly my love? Are there ways that I could actively live it out that would be meaningful to you? And to have that conversation. Because when we really do care about people, we want to know what helps them feel the love that we have for them. And we ask. Secondly, in our class on the 7 spiritual laws that was written by Deepak Chopra, in the very first law we studied, Deepak suggests that every day when we encounter anyone, we make sure to take time to give them something. Now, he's not talking something physical, although you could do that. It could simply be a blessing. Try today, as you walk around this place after service, every person you come in contact with, you may not say a word to them, but send them a blessing. Send them love. Declare your connection. Bless their week. Silently or verbally, however you want. But he says that we get into that unconditional state of the givingness that is our true nature. And indeed, what I would say is that when we do, we are happy because this is our true nature. Because God is the unconditional love that seeks expression through each one of us. When we give into that and we are that, we are happier and we are more connected. Whereas when we give into the separation stories and we begin to create a case for how different we are and how separate we are, we're unhappy because it's not our true nature. It's not who we really are. So finding ways every day to express our connection to every being who comes into our field of vision is powerful. Take time in nature, in spiritual practice, and in silence to feel into that unconditioned love that is seeking expression through us. Because as we feel it for ourselves and we allow it to bloom forth in ourselves and we begin to let go of our stories about why we're unacceptable, unlovable, or unworthy, which happens to us as we let the love that God is just burn those silly stories away, as it shines brightly through us, we become more able to be a representative of this kind of love because it starts with us. So finding time to feel into the love that God is as us is important. Those 3 things practiced this week could change our lives. And lastly, imagine with me a world where every being could sense how loved they are and lived from it on behalf of every other being. As we imagine it and we call ourselves to it, one by one by one by one, we change our life. Unconditional love is unconditional. It's calling you. It's calling me. Let's say yes to it.
Thank you for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. If you'd like to make a donation, text 720-230-1404 or visit us at milehighchurch.org. Peace out, friends.